He went out about 10:30. He heard something to his right. I heard some rocks getting thrown into the creek. My name is Daryl Adams. I got interested in Bigfoot when I retired as a general contractor from California. I'd moved to Oregon in 2011. I retired, so I wanted to go hunting and fishing, basically. And my brother lives out here in Oklahoma. He was interested in Bigfoot forever. I was kind of on the fence with it, whether I believed it or not. But so as I got out there hunting and stuff, he would contact me all the time and say, "Hey, while you're out there looking around, see if you see this or that footprints, all these tree bent over things and X's in the woods and all that." So I kind of kept my eye out for that stuff. And pretty soon, after hunting for a while in Oregon, I started seeing these things. So then I started believing more in it, and I saw how thick it was out in the woods there. So I thought, yeah, a big, 8 foot, 900 pound monkey could live out here and no one could ever find it because it's really, it gets really thick out in the woods there. And then I ended up moving from one property we had up to Cottage Grove, Oregon. And as soon as we moved into this property, behind the property was a big mountain. Basically, it was all BLM land, government land, core property, whatever you want to call it out here. But out there, it's basically Bureau of Land Management land. So BLM land. And there was a bunch of thousands of acres. So we moved into this house that backed up to that. And this property had a few acres. So we moved in there, and I think it was December. Anyway, it was rainy like it is in Oregon all the time, but it was really wet. And as soon as we moved into this house, I would take my little dog out back at night to go to the bathroom before we went to bed and start hearing all these sounds up in the woods behind our property. There was no other properties there, and thought it was weird. All these screams, yells, whoops, pops, bangs, booms. So as the weather got better, my brother had actually gotten an invite to a thing they put on every year out there called Beachfoot. It's put on by Todd Neese. And so we were planning on going to that, I said, yeah, I'll go. And I was having, all these sounds and stuff going on behind our property at the time. So my brother, he ended up not being able to go. His mother-in-law had gotten real bad sick in Illinois, so he had to stay and fly out there with his wife. So I ended up going by myself. So I sitting around the campfire there with Ron Moorhead and Bob Gimlin, and I'm telling them, yeah, I live out here, and out of Cottage Grove, Oregon, and I'm hearing all these weird sounds and all this stuff. And Ron Moorhead, he told me, well, there's a guy that lives not far from you that you can contact that, might help you out with some of that stuff and kind of give you some insight into what those sounds are or what the weirdness is going on around there. So he gave me Tobe Johnson's name.
Hi, I'm Linda Eastburn of Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, and I have a new book out called Threshold to Encounters. It's about 40 years of research and experience with all of these wild cryptids that many of you I know have encountered yourself. You can find it on Amazon.com.
So when I got back home from Beachfoot, I just went on Facebook Messenger and hit Tobe Johnson up, said, hey, I'm so-and-so. I spoke with Ron Moorhead. He gave me your information and said I should contact you about this stuff that's going on here. And so I did. And it ended up being, around the time, I think, when they were casting those prints out at the Cottage Grove Lake. They'd cast them before that, but that's where I met Tobe Johnson out there where they had cast all those footprints, the London Trackway, I think they call it, which had been cast a few years prior to that. but we kind of hooked up, me and him and his girlfriend, and we were talking about that stuff. And so I invited him to come over and check out the sounds. And at that time, I had started recording them also on I had a parabolic thick dish that my brother had given me, and I had a Sony recorder that I had won in a raffle at Beachfoot. So I was just kind of set it all up in my back, pointing up into the woods there where all those sounds are coming from. So, anyways, Tobe Johnson, he ended up at the time, he he was kind of living in his trailer. He'd just gotten a divorce and he was kind of, roaming around. So I said, hey, we got this land if you want to, park your trailer out here on our property and kind of hang out, and maybe you can help me out with what's going on out here. So I think it was about a week later, he moves out to our property and ended up staying there for a few months. But that's kind of how I started getting more into the Bigfoot. And I was recently retired and I was used to doing stuff every day. So I started, getting into it, putting out, peanut butter and cookies and things like that. And they started showing up. And I also recorded a lot of sounds. I still have almost, I think, 1,200 hours that I haven't even gone through of sounds. Every morning I would go, and I had Tobe Johnson installed Audacity on my computer, and I'd go in there in the mornings and plug in the thing there, and then I'd scroll through there because there's a thing on the bottom that you can see that'll just show you the Bigfoot sounds or whatever mostly. So I would go through there until I'd find them, and then I would save that. But anyways, I got a few sounds that they're using right now on every episode of Expedition Bigfoot. When the episodes first come on, the scream, the yell of the Bigfoot that they have in the background there, that's a sound that I recorded at that property. And so it kind of went on, and a lot of strange things happened around there. We'd hear all the sounds. Then it kind of got into different stuff, like kind of paranormally type stuff. Things would happen at the house. A lot of gifting would show up. I think first I was elk hunting. I had gotten a elk tag for the property back there, and it's kind of a special hunt. You can only get it every few years. So I had drawn it that year. And Tobe Johnson was truck driving. So he just came in from taking a load out to Bend, Oregon. And I said, hey, you want to go out with me for the evening hunt on the elk? It's up in that area where we saw the X's and the different wood structures out in the woods. And he said, yeah, why not? So we take off in my little truck out there. And as we're going up to that area, getting pretty close, off to the side of the road in the red clay embankment, Tobe Johnson says, hold it, stop. And I stopped and I looked at the embankment, and I could see these two big indentations in the red clay. So we get out and we're looking at them, and they're really strange. It's almost looked like someone got mad at their little brother and jammed his head in the red clay, kind of side by side. But we ended up really looking at them real close. I had a real strong flashlight and could look at them, and we could see black and reddish black hairs protruding that had gotten stuck in the clay. And we realized, hey, these are actually knee prints from something that kneeled down here. I mean, they're huge. So Toad ran back into town and got the casting materials, hydrocal, whatever it was, and we kind of set up a little form around them, like if you were going to pour a concrete. And we stayed out there till about midnight, until everything, dried up enough after we mixed up all that hydrocal, whatever it was. And it took until about midnight for all that to dry. And then we took those castings of those knee impressions, and we took them back to my house. And the house had a brand new shop that had just been built. Also, off to the other side, it had a nice big garage. So at first we put them in the garage portion, and it took probably about 2 weeks for the red clay to kind of dry off of them, and it kind of had a crust. So we took them into the new shop at that point, the knee impressions, and we set them there. I kind of made a carrier for them, and we set them there, and then Tope took the tweezers with alcohol and extracted hairs off of them and off the red clay. We actually took some up at the place out of the actual impression spots, hair, put them in an envelope. And we once we got those knee impressions moved over to that shop, a lot of weird stuff started happening in that shop. It was a brand new shop. It had two big roll-up RV doors on it, and come out one morning, and I'd lock it every night. Come out one morning, one of the doors is open. Like, I don't know, it could have a malfunction, whatever. So I didn't think much of it. And then we came out one day, and we started one morning and started looking, and on the side of the shop there was a man door where we could just go in and out without having to use the big roll-up doors. And in the frame of the wood frame of that door, there was greasy, gigantic hand fingerprints, like something tried to pull out the door frame. And they were that thick, the fingers on them. So something was trying to get in there and get those knee impressions, we thought. So that was kind of the thing. Those knee impressions in there really started the gifting. About 3 or 4 days after we put them in there, we came out one morning, and there was a little kid's little blue dinosaur toy plastic velociraptor sitting right there. I don't know if it was on the counter with them or if it was actually it was sitting on the knee impressions. Doors locked on the shop. No one had access to it other than me. And it's just weird stuff. We started getting gifts like that. Pretty soon we would get other things, like we would be talking about stuff in the shop, and we would be going through those sounds that I was recording. And I got so many Bigfoot yells, grunts, pops, bangs, whoops. I got some speech like Ron Moorhead's samurai chatter. I caught him talking like that. So I kind of, got all that. And then we got a lot of gifting left outside, mostly in things in the number 3 a lot, like rocks. The house it was an old farmhouse, 2-story, had a big deck on the front. And on the deck rail, in the mornings, a lot of times there'd be 3 rocks sitting on the deck rail. I mean, at first you're thinking, yeah, crows or whatever carry rocks, but they don't put them in 3s. But we kind of debunked everything to the 10th power, and we just couldn't figure out what was doing this stuff. So, and we were hearing all these Bigfoot sounds, and inside the shop sounded like we would get EVPs in there, things like that. It sounds like people talking. I mean, the whole area was an old Native American place, and the first founders landed in that area that came there. But one night we had the house was 5-bedroom, big 2-story, redone old farmhouse. And up on the top floor was a big master bedroom. And then off to the side there was 2 smaller bedrooms up there. So summery months, we would open the window in our master bedroom and open the windows in the other 2 bedrooms and leave all the doors open. So the wind would blow through there and keep it cool at night, because Oregon, you don't really need air conditioning. It cools way off at night, especially if you live in the woods. But on each side of the house up high was motion sensor lights. So this certain night, the motion sensor light on the side where the 2 bedrooms were, my wife went up to go to the bathroom, and she came back and she said, "Hey, that light's on out there." And it was on the side where the shop was. So I'm thinking, what could it be? It could be, stray cat, possum, raccoon, whatever. So I just get up and as I'm walking out of our room in through the hallway to the other little bedroom, I'm upstairs. I'm, 15 feet, 20, 15 feet up. The light goes out as I'm walking. So I go over there and it's a full moon that night. It's bright outside. So I go over there and I'm looking around. I could see in the backyard pretty good because you're up high. And up against the house, I see this black figure. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And, we have gates, lock gates, a fence, everything. Had a 4-foot chain link fence. And I'm looking at it and I'm looking at it. I'm like, why would, it's straight up and down. It's not long like a bear or a deer or an elk or anything. And so I just do a little whistle like that. And this thing takes off and it just like 4 or 5 steps and it hits that chain link fence like ping. But when it took off, it sounded like a horse. When a horse gets up and they go, they got all that strength and power when they knock the dirt off themselves. So, and then, I'm standing there listening, and what do you know, up into the woods right behind us, I hear like a whoop, whoop, like something calling like the other one that just ran off. So that was kind of my first experience at that place, at that property with the actual Bigfoot running away. I didn't see it perfectly. I just saw this huge black figure. So the next day I told Tobe Johnson that, there was something standing here. And on the bottom floor of the house, it had a concrete foundation around it that was about 2 foot high. And then the other bedrooms downstairs were on that side of the house where the shop was. On the one bedroom to the right where I saw this big figure down below was a big greasy face print. And it looked like where its nostrils were, it like blew out some like snot rockets on the window where it was like trying to put its face against the glass and breathing, like if you breathe against the glass on a car window or whatever. So Tobe Johnson got the Q-tips and everything, and we saved that stuff. And so that was my experience there. A lot of other things happened there that were paranormal, weird. Come home from church. Here's a rock in the middle of our living room, about that big. We had a outside camera on the house. We're out in the middle of nowhere. No one's around. House is locked completely up. Our little dog's upstairs, scared under the bed. But that was kind of that. And then COVID came on, and my wife's a therapist, mental health counselor. So we didn't have good internet out there. So we're like, well, she's got to work from home now. This stuff could last for, a few years or whatever. So we ended up putting a place up for sale. There's a lot more to it in between all that, but the shorter version is we put the place up for sale. It sold pretty fast. We moved into town, but I still knew where all this Bigfoot activity was, right up above the house. And so I made a habituation area up there for, I think, 2 or 3 years. I would go up there, put out peanut butter on a tree, cookies, apples, I got an old game camera, and I would put it on a tree there, and I'd put that moss that hangs off the trees everywhere out there in Oregon. They call it old man's beard or moss or whatever. I would kind of conceal my camera, and I got some really good pictures from that camera. You can see the peanut butter just disappearing off the tree in a few spots, and it kind of almost looks like the Predator on the show with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can see through it a little bit, but it's kind of the pixels are distorted. And so one day I had my grandson with me, and we went up. I would go up there about every 3 days. I would make little booby traps for him. I would take I went to the Dollar General, which is on, every corner. I got a little handheld mirror, like if you want to brush your hair in your car. And I took that with my peanut butter and cookies, and I sprayed the mirror with some Pam cooking spray. And I got my little stool and I stood up on the tree and put it up about 8 foot on a nail. And behind the mirror, I had rubbed peanut butter and stuck some cookies. So whatever got that peanut butter or cookies had to touch the mirror. And I ended up getting 3 big finger swipes on the mirror, on the greasy mirror. And whatever it was, it had to have taken that mirror off and cleaned all that stuff off and put the mirror back, because all the peanut butter and everything was gone. It almost looked like it had been vacuumed off there with a shop vac. But that was a lot of the evidence I got. I would take go to Walmart, get those 3 flats of eggs, and I would boil half of them and keep half of them raw and take it up there in that area and do it like an Easter egg hunt. Put them everywhere to hide them behind barks and trees. And a lot of people say, yeah, every animal eats eggs. Yeah, they do, I'm sure. But not every animal doesn't leave one eggshell. We would never even find an eggshell. And that area doesn't have like raccoons. It's not by, there's not a river real close. I never saw raccoons. I saw a possum once, but the eggs would be gone even if you put them under down in the old bark of a tree stump or whatever. Everything would be gone. And I'm talking like 50, 75 eggs at a time. So I ended up going to Hobby Lobby and getting some of this big, thick, 2-sided like Scotch tape. And on the vine, there's vine maples there everywhere. On the vine maple, I made like a little cradle, and I put that tape on that egg and stuck it in that cradle hanging down. And when I came back a few days later, the egg was gone. Something had somehow peeled that sticky tape off of it, and there was huge fingerprints all over that tape. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. So I had all that evidence, and I had, hair. Hair was stuck all over the tape, all everywhere there was hair there. I would take a black trash bag and, get your latex gloves, turn the trash bag inside out where a tree was, where I'd put the peanut butter cookies. And then I would just make the static electricity with a bag and rub it all around, and then close it up, and then take it home and take scissors and cut the bag open and look real close with a flashlight. You'll get 10 or 20 hairs. But I had so many hairs, and there was footprints everywhere up there. We cast trackways of footprints, all different size. The biggest one I think is about a 17.5 inch. And the stride was normally about 5'3". That was a common stride of them up there walking. So when I was about to move, I live in Oklahoma now, but when I was about to move, I had been doing habituation for about 3 years, and I pretty much had everything I could get other than a body. I had hairs, fingerprints, the footprint, the video on my game camera. It's not a video, it's just a picture snap of this cloaked out looking thing that's taking all the peanut butter and stuff off the trees. So one of the last times I went up there, my grandson went with me. He's young. He's about 22 now, but he ran right down in there to get the card out of the game cam. And me, I'm, not that quick, and it's slick and kind of muddy. But every time I'd get up there, I'd get my phone ready because there was sounds all the time and, weird stuff. So as he's going down this way to get the game cam down in the lower area, there's like a ravine that comes up to the right, like the mountain kind of V's in there. Down there a ways, I see this black thing take off, blackish red, take off walking really fast. So I just get my phone up and I'm just snapping, I think 127 pictures. So I ended up getting 2 photos of this Bigfoot walking away from that area where I had all that stuff put out. And one of them, you can see him really good. And the other one, it's kind of the last half of him going behind the tree. And he was gone. He was walking super fast with his head down. And I saw that one there. And then I moved out here, and I had a lot of other experience stuff, but that's kind of the short version of it right there.
Well, you certainly have had a lot of experience, I'll tell you, and a lot of questions along the way. If we go back to the old farmhouse where you lived and some strange things started happening, how long did you live there before kind of that paranormal stuff began?
Pretty much after we brought those knee impressions back. When we first moved in there, it was really not much was going on. And then it just kind of escalated after we got those knee impressions in that shop. And it's almost like if you play into this thing, it just builds and builds, and it'll just keep messing with you. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I was normal when I got there, and that kind of stuff just messes with your head, and you can't wrap your head around it, and it can get to you, because I mean, we had a lot of strange things happen
Well, tell
at
me
that
about
house.
some of the strange things that happened there.
Well, there was the rock when we came home from church in the living room. It was all hardwood floors. It was a really cool old redone farmhouse. But on the hardwood floor, we had a nice rug in the center of the living room. There was that round rock. It was kind of I don't know, looked like a small pancake. And it was there in the middle of the thing. Dog was upstairs scared. And so that was one of the stranger things. Sounds. We would hear a lot of sounds in the shop, especially. It would sound like 5 people in there with hammers hitting on the inside of the shop, just bang, boom, all kinds of pops and bangs. I put the recorder in there, and it was crazy. And we that was crazy because you'd go in there in the morning and nothing would be touched. We had a couple of the fold out tables, like the picnic tables that fold out. We had a couple of those sitting in there that I had put the laptop on and listened to, Audacity in the morning, having coffee, for all the sounds I was recording in the back, all the hoops and hollers and the sound. Like when you walk into the zoo and you hear these monkeys like screaming and yelling and hooping and hollering, and they're throwing poop at people or whatever. We would hear that at night up in the woods. It'd sound like, I would call it, hey, the monkeys are fighting again up there. But it was crazy, really loud. So I had that stuff recorded, and just different things. Weird things inside the shop would be, there was one corner of the shop. Now, my dog wouldn't go in that shop unless you forced her to go. She's a little toy Australian Shepherd, and she's always, inquisitive about every little thing. She's like hunting all the time. But she wouldn't go in that shop unless you kind of called her in there and shut the door. But there was a corner in that shop she would not go on. So I put the recorder over there, and we would just hear all those pops and bangs. And then on the outside of the shop in that area, we we would get some footprints, and this is all a gravel compacted driveway parking for RV. It's hard. It's really, and the soil was clay, so it was really compacted hard. We would get 2 or 3 footprints, and it almost Bigfoot footprints, and it almost looked like it would take the gravel with it. It was really strange. I mean, they weren't compressed out because the ground was so hard. It was like it had sticky feet, and it took the rock with it, but there would only be 2 or 3 of them, and they would just end. Like this thing just popped in, took a few steps in that area. So Tobe Johnson, he started putting things out there like Scrabble pieces on rocks and everything, and I can't remember. He actually had something written with the Scrabble pieces on the rocks there they didn't write it perfectly. They used like I think a 4 for a L or some kind of weird, but it did that. And then Tom Powell, he's a Bigfoot guy from Oregon. He's a friend of ours. He came down, and he's decided, I'm just going to do a little tic-tac-toe with him over there. So he got 3 little white rocks, I think, and a couple little sticks, and he did an X in the middle of the tic-tac-toe. Well, the next morning we come out, and here's 2 white rocks above it. I'm like, what? And we're all, I think he was camping right there, and Tobe's trailer was right there. And how did those rocks get on there? And then the next night, he put two X's with his little sticks, and something put three rocks on the left. So he's like, "You won." But that was kind of funny.
A
We
new
built that.
Bigfoot game.
Yeah, we were just, we were trying all kinds of different things. But after we built the new shop, we and we'd gotten those knee impressions inside there. We came out one morning, and on the downspouts for the rain off the gutters, on one of the downspouts on that corner where all that activity would go on, one of the downspouts got crushed. I mean, not completely crushed, closed, but crushed. And you could see three or four fingerprints and a thumb, how something had just grabbed it and crushed it. I think Tobe measured it. It was up 10 feet on that, because it was a big, tall shop. On that downspout, it was crushed, a brand new white downspout, crushed. And then on the right of that was the metal shop. It was a green. There was a big, greasy, big old giant handprint kind of slid down a little bit, like it put its hand there to hold itself and crushed that. But it was like the thing was angry and wanted those knee impressions back. So it had done the lifting of the door jamb on the other end, where the greasy fingerprints. And Tobe has all this documented. He did the book, The Owl Moon Lab. It's a book that's on Amazon, and he has he did a hanger one with the guy from Monster Quest, Doug Hychek. But it's called The Owl Moon Lab, the book, and it has codes in there that you can scan with your phone, and it'll actually play the sounds, and it'll also have photos of all this stuff I'm talking about from that shop.
Yeah,
And things.
tell people again how they can get to that, because I'm sure everyone will want to see the photos and hear the sound. So how can they get to this again?
It's on Amazon. It's called The Owl Moon Lab, and the reason that's the name of that Tobe gave that was because that night that we cast those knee impressions, it was Good Friday, actually, before Easter, and it was how they have different moon phases and they call them names. Well, that certain night was a full moon, and it was called the owl moon. Like they got the wolf moon, the harvest moon, the red moon. That was called the owl moon that night, that moon. We cast those impressions. So, and then in that shop, we were doing all these little, trying to little booby traps and different things, trying to get information on the Bigfoots. So it was like a lab, we were doing the peanut butter, and we had all different kinds of things to get evidence on that we were getting all kinds of evidence. So that's hence the name, the Owl Moon Lab. And if you go to Amazon, just Owl Moon Lab, Tobe Johnson's the author, and it's put out by Hanger One Publishing, which is Doug Hychek from Monster Quest Publishing Company. Okay. And it's a really cool book. I've heard the editing in there is not very good, like words misspelled and stuff, but it's pretty cool. It's the only book that I've ever heard of that has the barcodes things, so you can scan them and actually witness what's going on as you're reading.
Something you said, cool. That they were wanting to get those knee prints back. Now, obviously they wanted to get to those knee prints, but what made you think that they wanted to get them back?
I don't know, just because I guess the crushed downspout and the greasy handprint, and then on the door jamb on the other end, the man door, looked like they tried to rip it out because there was two big greasy handprints and fingerprints. And then also on the door of that shop, that white man door, brand new white door, big old greasy handprints, like something had been, trying to grab it, and then kind of had a couple scratches on the door jamb on that side, like, something
obviously they were trying to get into the shop, no doubt about that. Now, in that one corner where there was some kind of unusual something that hadn't been there before, but now suddenly you have this sound coming from there, and your dog won't go there. Do you think there was some essence of Bigfoot, something else that was in that corner?
That was an old farmhouse, one of the original farmhouses from the original founders which was a group of people called Hebron. They came from Pennsylvania, but their group originated from Jerusalem over there. And that was one of their original farmhouses. That farmhouse had been built onto. It was, the people we bought it from, the guy was a contractor, and he completely redone it. But underneath the house, they had to leave some of the hand hewn beams, the big beams. They were still under there because you got to leave something there to grandfather your new house onto, or they'll charge you like major taxes or something. But anyways, that house was originally just a little one room house from the original founders, which started a church called, the Hebron. They were the Hebron group. They were a group of people, original founders that came to Oregon in the late 17, early 1800s. So does that have anything to do with the weirdness there? I don't know. Plus it was a major Native American area. There was a river running right in front of the house, and across the river was a rise of land where there was a big native compound, a native reservation or whatever they called it back then.
Do you know
And
if there was
so
activity
there's a
there
lot of
prior?
history.
Do you know if there was activity there that others witnessed prior to your moving there?
Really, the people that we bought it from, they were kind of neat. They don't want to talk about any of that. But the neighbor on the one side, which we call Wormy because he's a worm farmer, he raises earthworms for the soil. I guess it's worm castings or something that they use. Gardeners like to use the soil. So he raises he's got acres there of worms. So his real name's Chris, but we called him Wormy because he's a worm farmer. But he had seen this thing he called the chandelier. And I ended up getting some pictures of it, a video of it and some pictures. But what it would come, and behind this house, before you get up into the real thick woods, was a major power lines, two major power lines that fed the whole state of Oregon. And, the big and the big power line area. But he told us, oh yeah, I've seen that thing. He called it the chandelier. It would just hover there, maybe 1,000 feet off the ground, about, I don't know, 500 feet or more above the power lines. And it would just flash like it was pulsating, looked like one of those jellyfish, you see on shows where they just flash all these real pretty lights. But anyways, he also, out of his old farmhouse, him and his wife and his daughter, they were a little bit kind of off-gridish. They were Jehovah's Witness, but they didn't like all the modern stuff. Out of his front door, and he owned 65 acres of property up in there to the left. So out of his front door was the logging road that went up to his property. And then across that logging road was this woodshed he had. And they used a wood stove to keep warm. So he told me one night he went out about 10:30, to get the wood to stoke the fire for the night to keep them warm. And he had 3 pieces of wood or a bundle of wood in his arms, and he had his little mag flashlight in his mouth, walking back across the road to go in his door. And he heard something to his right. It's standing in that logging room. And he looked up, and here was this giant Bigfoot, monkey man, he called it, with real pretty blue eyes when he shined the light on it. They weren't lit up blue, but when the light hit him, he could see it. So he dropped the wood and ran in the house. So he'd been seeing and hearing Bigfoots for a long time. He had lived there from the early 90s. So he'd been there, 30 years or whatever, 20 something years.
Other people had witnessed this too. Was he also having some unusual paranormal phenomena at his place?
Yeah, but he's kind of a religious guy, so he just kind of plays it off. He would just joke with me all the time. Yeah, he'd say, I saw the chandelier. Me and my wife came in from church late, and it shined a beam of light on us. And And what I ended up getting a video of it. I can send it to you, but it would come out there. I would take my dog out at night. I only saw it about 3 times, but this one certain time, it was hovering above those power lines, and it was kicking out, like dropping off orbs into the forest where I had all that activity later on, where I'd put my habituation area. So you can see it just dropping off these little lights, little round balls, orbs. That's what they call them, I guess, into the woods back there. So I got a video of it, and yeah, that was another weird thing. But
Some people think those orbs turn into Bigfoot, and Bigfoot turns back into orbs. Do you have any impression of that?
I never got any impression of that. But I mean, what are they doing? Why are they dropping them out there in the woods where all that stuff's going on? Could easily have been that. I got pictures. I got pictures of orbs also across the river there in front of the house, where I told you that the Native American reservation, or whatever they called it back then, was the Calapuyas Indians there in Oregon. Out of the ground, every now and then we'd see these orbs coming out of the ground out there in that field. We could see it across the river from our deck. And they would come up. Some of them were like ribbons going up. They'd come up probably, I don't know, 100 feet or so in the air. I'm not sure how high. And then they would just fade out, just go away. So I guess those are orbs. I'm not sure. I saw one night I had my truck, and then I had a little truck, a beater truck that I took hunting and out into the woods. So I had my little truck parked on the back of the shop. And one night I see this white orb going behind my little truck real slow. And it almost looks like someone carrying a lantern real dim. And I got a picture of it, and you can see there's no one or anything around it, but it's like they don't really illuminate out. They're like a dim kind of light. And then if you look at them really closely, they almost look like something's going on inside them. I don't know, like a ball of fusion or something. I can't explain it. But
So
yeah,
you
we saw a few orbs,
so you
red
moved to
ones.
Oklahoma. So you moved to Oklahoma, and from Oklahoma, have you had any experience in Oklahoma?
Just a little bit of weirdness. Like I had this same thing happen to me out there. I have a nice truck. I have it locked all the time. Come out one day, my wife, we're getting in to go to breakfast. It was the weekend. And on the center console, here's a bird feather just laying there in a locked up truck. And I had had that happen out in Oregon at that property like 3 times. Just subtle things like that. The other day, we have a deck here also on this property. There was a real nice little rock laying on the rail of the deck, just one rock. And one day I went to, I have a big shop. I went to, my truck's kind of parked by the shop, but I went out, and on the back bumper of my truck are 2 old, and we'd been having, Oklahoma had been getting a lot of, you guys too, probably up there, thunder, lightning, tornado warning stuff. So our power had went on and off a few times. On the back of my bumper are 2 old glass fuses that go in fuse box, like from the 50s or whatever. They were glass back then. They didn't have the breakers. And there were 2 of them sitting on my back bumper of my truck. So just little subtle weird things like that. I don't know why. I think I'm pretty much a normal person, but all my life, weird things like that have kind of happened to me. I was a kid, when we were kids in a small town, you better be home before the street lights come on or you're going to get beat, our parents. So me, of course, I'd push it to the limit. If I was at the other end of town riding my little Stingray, I'd go under street lights and they'd go out. And people were like, "You're weird." So weird stuff like that's kind of happened to me my whole life. I electronics mess up around me a lot of times. A lot of people's cell phones get drained around me. I've had, another weird thing I had up there was my cell phone recorded a video inside my truck, at 12:30 at night. Me, Tobe Johnson, and another guy were up there, squatching late at night. We'd go up there about midnight and stay till about 3, because that's kind of like the witching hour for Sasquatch is between 2 and 3 up there. They would start yelling and, having their party or whatever. So we were up there one night, my little truck, I just leave my cell phone in there because there's no service there up in that area. There was, you couldn't get any service. You're out in the middle of nowhere. So I just leave my truck in the my phone in the center console of the truck the next morning. And then when I got home, I plugged it in, over there on the dresser and left it. And the next morning I got it about 10 and I noticed there was a video on it. And I'm like, well, that's really weird. You couldn't really even do a video up there because you don't have any Wi-Fi and your phone won't hardly do any of that. So I click on it and it's some weird, it's about a 22-second long video that my phone took by itself in my locked truck out in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere. And it sounds kind of almost like my voice, but it's speaking some unknown language. And then it pops in and out, and some lady in the background's going, "What's going to happen when they're out there?" And it's like, that is the weirdest thing, and nobody can figure it out. I've had people look at it, all that. They're like, that's impossible. A phone can't do a video like that and dub all that in there. And so, yeah, that was a really strange thing.
Well, I've heard of cell phones. I've heard of other people having really strange things happen with cell phones, like automatically calling certain numbers, and just really weird things happen. But there again, we're looking at an electronic type of device that seems to have some kind of ability to interact with whatever these forces are that are playing with, often playing with our heads because we don't understand what's happening with it.
Yeah. And pretty soon, I was there doing that for about 6 years. But at the initial first part, when I said I'm normal or whatever, it really messes with your head. And then after you're there a while and it kind of happens a lot, you kind of just don't think about it that much. You wake up in the morning in the sink, here's 2 forks crossed like this in your sink, and you've done all the dishes the night before. You're like, what the heck? Where'd those come from? And just after a bunch of stuff, subtle little things. I mean, if people are wondering, just start looking for subtleties. I mean, there was little, like they would just take sticks and make like the pie symbol, in the floor of the shop, the pie thing. They would take little twigs and do that, and a lot of these A things that got like the center thing going this way or that way. Like, I don't know what that symbol is, but a lot of those, they call them glyphs. I didn't even know what they were.
Were you ever able to comprehend if there was a message in these symbols?
Not really. I even got a spot where I was out in the middle of nowhere up there and in the mud on a road. It looks like they took a stick and made a whole bunch of hieroglyphic symbols. And I know no one else was up there because, it's out in the middle of nowhere, and you kind of it's not really easy to get into. You'd have to drive a long ways, and so people really didn't come in there.
Have you ever had an incident of mind speak where they were telepathically communicating with you?
No, I never did. I never had that, or I never did see those glowing eyes, the eyes that illuminate themselves. I never did get any one of that, but I got so many voices in my head already. There's no more room for anything. I'm just kidding. No, I never.
A lot of vocals, at least, yeah.
But I never had any mind speak or anything.
What do you think they are? I mean, there's just a lot of very odd and unusual behavior here with them. So what do you think they are, and why do you think they were communicating with you so much?
I don't know. I think I already have that kind of weirdness built into me from birth, that strange things happen to me. And so I'm kind of like a magnet for any of that weirdness when I'm around. And it's almost like when you get with another person that's similar to that, man, it amps it up. Because Tobe Johnson, he's like that. So when me and him were out in the woods or whatever, here goes an orb by, or we hear the whooping and cracking on the trees, and just, you'd hear car doors slam out in the middle of nowhere in the woods. You're like, what the heck? There's no way a car can be out here. You would hear just all kinds of, it's almost like, and I have a picture of a portal that I saw coming out of a tree. I'll send you that.
Well, tell me about this portal coming out of a tree. Where and when and what did you witness?
Well, we were up in the woods, and there was about 7 or 8 of us this time. And there was a lady from Washington State that's kind of a sensitive, or I don't know if she's like a psychic, but anyway, she's kind of like me and Arla Williams, and weird things happen to us. But she was, she's a gal that a lot of that happens. And I'm like, yeah, you guys are just, you should be locked up. Anyway, they're out there beating on their drums and da-da-da, kumbaya, whatever. And she comes to me and she looks at me. I mean, there's a fire. It's late at night, like midnight or something. And she goes, there's a couple Bigfoot over there by that creek. And I'm like, okay. This lady's loony. But so I kind of walk away from the group, and I could, still see them over here to the right. I walk up this little rise, and on the other side is the creek running down through there. As soon as I'm going up this little rise, I hear something over by the creek go whoop real loud. And they couldn't hear it because they're over there beating on them drums and everything. So I stop and I'm listening and listening. And as soon as I stop, I mean, probably a minute or two after I stopped and started listening, over to the right up the trail, it was kind of a bank and the creek, but there was a trail along the creek, and it's all big pine trees. You're up in the forest. I see this light flash, and I'm like, what the heck was that? There's nobody out here at this time of night, and I can see everybody in our group right there. And then I see it flash again a few minutes later, and it looked kind of like an old flash bulb. Remember those old cameras? I don't know if you're that old, but like I am. Flash bulb, and then it kind of poof, and then it kind of residual for a minute or a few seconds. But that's what this thing would do. It would just poof out, and then it was like a residual light there for 3 or 4 seconds. So I'm watching it, and it was doing it about every 3 or 4 minutes. So, of course, I always have my phone. I get my phone out, and I kind of time it. So about the 4th time, I figure about 2 minutes, I'll just start tapping pictures. So sure enough, man, I got it. I got a good picture of it. And you can see it, and you can see the big pine tree to the left of it. And then I stood there, and it did it once more, and it stopped. And then right after it stopped, I heard some rocks getting thrown into the creek down there, like big rocks, like kapoosh. And I'm like, what in the heck? So I walked back down that little hill to the left where the group was, and I got Tobe Johnson. I said, come here, man. You got to see this dang light coming out of this tree. So we're walking back up there, and on the other side of the creek over there, we hear a knock, or 3 knocks, like boom, boom, boom. He's like, oh man, there's some Bigfoots over there. I go, yeah, I heard a whoop and some rocks getting thrown in the water. So we walk up, and I didn't want to get close to that light because it was so weird. And I said, just stay right here and wait a minute. We waited there about 15, 20 minutes, and it never did it again. So that was the
So why did you
thing.
call it? Why did you call it a portal?
Well, I really didn't. It was kind of like an energy surge. But, when I showed the pictures of people, they're like, oh, yeah, that's a portal where the Bigfoots come in and out of. I'm like, well, whatever. But Ron Moorhead talks about, portals out of trees, It was a huge, big pine tree.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. I just didn't know if, what the flash of light was, but it was actually emanating from the tree itself.
It looked like it was kind of coming out like maybe 2 or 3 feet up the tree, and it was going up, at a 45-degree angle to the sky. And it would flash, but then I don't know if it was just my eyes because it was bright, but it would look like the light would stay there for a little bit after the initial flash. It's hard to explain it.
Yeah.
Kind of like those flash bulbs, they go poof, and then they would stay lit up for 3 or 4 seconds till they cooled off. It was a lot like that. And I have a really good picture of it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm the only person that's got a picture of a portal or whatever it is. I didn't know what it was. That's
At
just
least
what
it's a
people
flash of
said.
light. It's a flash of light, at
Yeah.
least. Yeah, for sure. Well,
Yeah,
I
it was
appreciate you. I
crazy.
appreciate you coming on today and sharing all this great information with us. This is just phenomenal. Send me a few pictures of the most important things we talked about, and I'll try to get those on. I
Okay.
know you've sent some vocals. I'll try to get those on, and see if we can get this out to more people. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and end now, and
Yeah, and if
hopefully we'll
people
have you
want to
back
hit
on
me
another
up,
time.
if people want to hit me up on Facebook Messenger, I'll send you all this stuff. I'm not I'm normal as can be.
Yeah.
All this weirdness happened to me for some reason, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of evidence of
Yes.
Bigfoot also.
It sounds like it. And it sounds like the evidence that you have and the experiences that you've had, we can safely say this is probably not just a flesh and blood character in the woods.
Well, they call them land spirits in Oregon.
Yeah.
I don't know. At first I went from not believing in it at all, kind of thought it was a joke, to thinking, yeah, there could possibly be a monkey out here running around, kind of half human, whatever. And I'd seen some really good footprints by a stream one day, one really, really good one that wasn't washed away. But I went from that, and then when I moved into that property, just everything broke loose with the craziness. But
Sounds like
yeah,
it.
if you look at that book, you can see a lot of it there. And then anybody wants to hit me up, I'm on Facebook. I'll share anything I got. I'm not like someone that's, I'll tell you where to go. If you want to go have your own experience there, I'll show you right where the property's at.
Sounds real good.
I mean, it's government land. You can do what you want there.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end our talk today. So I do appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.